Now this video will have some basic 101 information on painting carbon fiber motorcycle parts, but it would apply to anything made out of carbon fiber. And the cleaning and sanding part applies to anything that you're going to paint. Some good basic information. If you've never painted a carbon fiber part, I think there'll be some useful information on this video. So it really doesn't matter what the carbon fiber part you have, assuming it's not been painted with colored paint. This part has a clear finish. A lot of times the carbon fiber will have an epoxy finish. It can have no finish at all. It can be the resin that they made the part with and made in a female mold, of course. There's a lot of things you need to know about that original part before you do anything. But the first thing you need to do is clean the part. Absolutely clean that part. Now, it doesn't really matter how you clean it. If you have a steam cleaner, which I do, that helps. Simple green, degreasing, prep salt, prep wall, acetone, any lacquer thinner. But getting the part clean inside and out before you move on to any kind of refinishing operation where you're going to add finish. Now, simple green is really good, really good. I find it does a really good job, especially in conjunction with, and in this case, this is a Bimota part. It's a very expensive part that belongs to Vlad. I wanted to get this part absolutely perfect if I could, and I cannot do that if at somewhere in the thing I skip a step or I do take some kind of shortcut to save 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Once I commit to doing the part, the cleanup and the prep of the part before I go and add any finish to it, getting it smooth, sanding it, but it all starts with having the part clean. And in helping people learn how to do this kind of work in my shop, the hardest thing to convince people of, especially with these exotic bikes that are pretty much, a lot of it is carbon fiber with a high gloss finish. You can't paint over a high gloss finish. This is 400 sandpaper and simple green, right out of the jar, simple green. And this is a good way to start the degreasing process. Getting the degreasing process going, I like to think to myself, the more of the grease I can get off here now, the more I'm stacking the deck and absolutely in favor of that paint that I'm going to put on, the clear urethane, is going to stick, it's going to shine, and it's going to have a minimum of defects in it. So I'm accomplishing 2 and 3 things here at the same time. I'm degreasing the part using the simple green. I'm smoothing the part and getting out any fisheyes, imperfections, anything that's not correct, or if there's scratches, if there's cracks, I'd want to fix them with CA. But the whole prep of the part. I always try to convince people when you have a part like this, and again, this is a part you just can't go to the store and buy for a few dollars. These are hard to get parts. They're worth restoring. They're worth putting in the time and effort to do it right. And in this case, it's going to be a little bit of a labor of love to do this. And I just want to show one part of this, because if we stayed on this, it would wind up being a 2-hour video. But I'm going to get one area totally prepped, totally sanded, and ready. Then I want to deal with the fender. Now, all of these parts, they are carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is unique. Every carbon fiber part that's made in a mold has some kind of mold release agent on it. And sometimes when the parts are not correctly made, that mold release agent winds up in little pinholes in the carbon fiber, in which case you really have a nightmare filling them in and sanding them down. This part, it's a Bimota part again. Looked like it was pretty decent, but I want to show the beginning of this part, and I really want to show the prep that goes into it. Now, keeping it clean, keeping it dry. Again, a steam cleaner is a wonderful thing. That really does a lot of good. Acetone is real good, and any degreasing agent. But the idea is, before you go to the next step of painting, spraying, buffing, the first thing is to get the part clean. And that is so hard to get that part across, that information across to people that are new to painting. And these videos are made to help people that are new to painting. The whole part, now see, part of it is still wet. That's going to dry up. But that's the whole thing. I want that whole part to look just like that, flat. It's got a little bit of an etch from the 400 sandpaper. And another thing, if there's a repair in there or a little defect, I want to get out as many of the defects as I can, because when I put the final finish on these parts, I want to have as little time buffing them out as possible. And it's just time consuming to do that. It is not, none of these steps are 5-minute steps. Now, this bike has all scratches along the bottom. I'm going to do the rest of this part basically off camera and move on to the fender, because to make the whole part look like that, probably 2 hours, 3 hours, I don't know, and it doesn't matter. We're going to get it done, and it's going to be done right. Now, since I spray and almost always in ice cold weather, it's always freezing, and I try to do most of this work in the winter, I try to spray on at least 2 and maybe 3 coats, at least 45 minutes, half an hour to dry in between coats. I like to leave it in a cold garage overnight and then bring it down and put it up by a heating vent for maybe a day or 2. The longer the better, 2 days, 3 days. Let it sit up by that heating vent, and the paint over the time that it's sitting up there will get harder and harder and harder, and just make it easier to sand. It's just that simple. So assuming you have the patience to let this sit up by a heating vent 2 days, 3 days, and actually it's the longer the better. Now you've got a nice coat of urethane, 4-to-1 urethane. Any brand, I have not found any favorite brand, 5-star, Gavco, they all seem to be pretty much the same. I use a Harbor Freight gun. I don't have any expensive guns, but I do have the ability to really sand everything that needs to be sanded needs to be sanded. And right now is when you make the piece as good as it's going to possibly be. Some people prefer 1,000 grit paper, 1,500. I don't think it's critical, but you need to sand this down. Now, the reason for that is I like to, at this point in time, a lot of people would go and buff that out. And yeah, it'll come out really nice, but to get it to be at that really top level where it looks like it's for a space shuttle, I always found at this point in time, this is the final step that really pays. I've got as much urethane on there as reasonable. I've got my sanding blocks out. I'm going to bring that whole part down to flat again. And of course, time consuming, labor of love, whatever you want to call it, this is the part that makes it really, really special when you're at a bike show or you're with your friends at the big get-together and everybody's looking at things and they can't find a flaw in your paintwork. This is usually what makes it happen. It's right now. Now, we're going to sand this whole part down. 1,000 grit, 1,500, not real critical. I want to get it flat again. I want to get a tooth on it. I'm using soapy water. But none of these steps are critical. What's critical is that you get it flat. When you get it flat, whether you do it with a block or by hand, right now, I'm doing it by hand, but some people prefer a block. Right now, a soft block, of course. Right now, I just want to get the whole part flat, dull, before I put that final coat on. And it's that final coat. When it's done right, then the buffing out of the part is a piece of cake. When you have flaws in it and fish eyes and dust, and you can still see some of the original repair work or scratches, but what happens is you wind up in the very end, where it should be a half hour, 45-minute job, it winds up taking you 3 hours to get the flaws out. Right now, this is one of the steps. If you really want jewelry, this is one of the steps you have to just endure, and it's a labor of love. And people that look at the videos and have commented on them, they tell me from time to time, and I think they do it with the right attitude, hey, Wendy, that's a nice video, but it got real long. Well, I try not to leave out steps. And I've been to many college classes where they teach you 90% of something, and I want to know 100%. I just want to know. And I love to see it in real time, but in this case, we're going to just get this part flat till the whole part is flat, and we will be ready to put on a final coat of the 4:1 urethane. And again, I don't think it's critical. The thing with all of this work is, it's not like if you used 1200 sandpaper, the job would be terrible. But just having it etched, and most of all having it flat. Now, needless to say, if you're a little heavy-handed and you get a little run or a little defect in the paint, this is the time to get it out. Because my target is always, when I put on the final coat of clear, that's when I want to have the minimum amount of, hopefully have none, but a minimum amount of things that when I get to the buffing operation, I have to deal with getting out those little flaws and little fish eyes, dust that's in the paint. Because again, I don't have a spray booth. I for all purposes, spray outdoors. Hopefully when the wind is blowing at a minimum. It's always real cold. Another thing, whenever I use 4:1, I always get the fast hardener. I never get the medium or the slow hardener, because what's going to happen all the while this part is drying, in my case it'll be in a garage, it's flypaper. And if there's bugs in the neighborhood or any dust that's in the air, and believe me, there's more dust in the air than you can imagine, until you paint a part like this, all of a sudden it's all over the place. But because we're going to buff the part out, it really doesn't matter. This is the basic 101 carbon fiber work, and when you get it flat like that and you put on that urethane finish, at the end, it's not only is it easy then to buff it out, but it is at that next level where you can't find flaws in the paint. And I think all of the labor you put into it, it's worth it. Now, recently I put on, in the last year anyway, a couple of videos that'll help at this point. I put a great water separator on the compressor. That helps minimize any fish eyeing or any moisture that's in the paint. And because sometimes on a day like today, it's really cold out. I mean, it's probably around 30 degrees while I'm painting here. The Harbor Freight guns, for the purpose I'm painting here, I'm not painting cars or trucks or big giant stuff refrigerators. For doing little parts like this, all the Harbor Freight stuff, I've never found a problem with it. But of course, if you have the budget, there's a lot of really good expensive stuff on the market. The compressor I used was under $100. The guns were about 20 bucks a piece when you had the coupon. I don't even think they have coupons anymore. But anyway, now the trick is, this is the final coat. So I'm being real careful. I'm not spraying it on like I'm painting a car. I've got the material coming out like it's a big airbrush, and I'm going back over and over and over and over. Then I look at it, candle it, look up, check it, and of course you do anything 4:1, actually anything paint, if you're doing it, it's a great idea to wear a mask, and with the proper cartridges, by the way, and airbrush it on slow. A lot of thin coats. It really, if you were painting a car, this would be ridiculous. You wouldn't be able to paint it. But on a part like this, what putting the paint on slow does, thin coats, it allows you to get a lot of material on with a minimum chance you're going to get a run. And what happens, the paint just lays down a lot nicer in that final coat. And in that final coat, now we're not going to get into buffing parts on this video. There's plenty of videos out on the channel. Just in my channel, search with the word buffing, and you will come up to, there's over 200 buffing videos out there. But I wanted to, just to emphasize again, we're coming up on the end of the video, I wanted to emphasize the 3 basic steps. Get the part super clean. Sand it flat. Don't try to paint over anything shiny or any imperfections and think, oh, nobody will see that in the final thing. Sand it before you put on that final coat of clear. Now, I know my friend Guy is in the middle of painting his bike. I haven't seen the latest step on his project yet, but I'm hoping he's going to be able to pick up a lot of stuff on this video, because that's actually the first bike he's painted. I think it's going to be real successful. I guess we're going to find out somewhere down the road. Now I can candle it. You can see the shine I have. And when it comes time to buff that part out, it'll be a tenth of what it would be if I didn't do the prep work right. that is going to be, when that's done, and remember, these are Bimota parts, not available from Partzilla or really anywhere. Now, if you're new to our channel, we have a very, very eclectic channel. One of the new features we have now is some of the videos are grouped into groups that you can access all the videos for one category in one mouse click. And it should be very convenient and very handy. Just check out the feature on the main screen playlist. And thanks to everybody for supporting the channel. We appreciate your support, and it makes this channel possible with all the things we do, the painting, the wheels, the polishing. And please take a second or two and hit the like button. And thanks everyone for watching.